Hello, everybody. We're back for another fight card. This one is going to be between Colby Covington and Joaquin Buckley. So let's break this card down. Actually, before that, let me just go over my last pick record for UFC 310. Let me just pull it up real quick on my phone. Let's see, Tapology. We're just going to give a quick recap real quick of that card. So let's see. Let's start from the bottom. So I picked Kennedy Njoku. He won by first round knockout. Looked pretty good. Not against the best competition, but he won. So we had Njoku. I picked Chase Hooper by submission. That was kind of a gimme. He submitted Clay Guida in the first round. Caught him in an armbar. Not too surprising. I had Michael Chiesa. Chiesa looked pretty good. They ended up getting the submission in the third round. Kind of how I thought, my pick with that one was that I feel like on his best day, Chiesa is just a way better fighter than Max Griffin. And Chiesa looked on his game. He looked on his game in that one. Got the win. I picked Joshua Van by decision. He won by decision. I picked Chris Weidman. He looked terrible. Outside of the left hook that he landed and dropped Eric Anders, he did have him hurt for that brief moment. But really outside of that, he looked pretty awful. I was wrong about the grappling. Eric Anders was actually the more effective grappler at this point in their careers, which is kind of surprising, to be honest. A little bit, Weidman is older, with the injuries, all the surgeries he's had. But I did pick Chris Weidman, so I missed that one. I picked Randy Brown. Brian Battle won, although I personally thought Randy Brown should have won the fight. But Brian Battle did get the win. He missed weight, I think, by 5 pounds or 4 pounds, not counting the 1 pound allowance. If it was a title fight, you would have missed weight by 5 pounds. But he won by split decision. Didn't look the best. He's got to figure out the weight. But I thought Randy Brown won. Close fight, but it is what it is. Brian Battle gets it done. I picked Aljo. This fight was also very close between Marzar Evelev and Aljo. I picked Aljo to win. There's an argument he could have. It really comes down to how you scored the third round. Aljo controlled Evelev longer in the third round, but Evelev, I think the difference was in that third round is when Evelev reversed and he got his own takedown, he ended up taking the back, and I think the judges valued that more than Sterling getting that double leg early and then just kind of controlling him against the cage and lacing his legs up and kind of holding him there. I think that was the difference, but really, really close fight. I would have liked to see this fight be 5 rounds, but Mavzar gets it done. Hell of a fight. I picked Themba against Luque. Couldn't have been more wrong. Themba got cracked early and then immediately choked out. Kind of hard to gauge, that performance because it was so quick and, that can kind of happen to anyone. But Luque looked good. He looked good and, it's going to be interesting to see how he looks from, here going forward against, the more upper echelon welterweights. Because this was a step down in competition, per the usual matchups that Vicente Luque would get. So, yeah, I had Themba, missed that one. I had Dominic Reyes by knockout. He won by TKO, although he didn't look as good as I thought he would. To be completely honest with you, he looked kind of not so good, especially considering he was fighting Anthony Smith. But he won, got the TKO. Moving on up, I picked Doo Ho Choi. He looked absolutely sensational. In fact, he looked a lot better than I thought he would. I thought this fight would be more of a knock him down, drag him out war, where he would have to maybe survive a couple of takedown attempts and close submissions. But, I mean, he just beat the shit out of Nate Landwehr everywhere, on the feet, on the ground. Just really dominant performance from Doo Ho Choi. Probably the best performance of his career. It's going to be really interesting to see where he goes from here. So, yeah, I had Doo Ho Choi. He won. I picked Bryce Mitchell. This fight I wasn't agreeing with the odds. I did pick Bryce Mitchell, but this fight wasn't the greatest up until the slam. It was Mitchell kind of outstriking him on the feet a little bit, and then he took him down. Or not, he didn't even really take him down. Crone just kept pulling guard. And fucking Bryce Mitchell was just defending from the guard pretty much the whole time. And Crone did have a pretty close armbar attempt. He really did. But Bryce Mitchell worked his way out of it and then ended up KOing Crone with a slam. Crone tried to pull guard in the third round, and Bryce just adjusted, put his forearm over his neck and kind of just pinned it and then just slammed him as Crone was trying to pull guard, and then pretty much knocked him out with the slam and then finished him off with a couple of elbows. So Bryce Mitchell gets it done. Moving on up, I had Ciryl Gane. by decision, and he won by decision, but he probably should not have won by decision. I thought Volkov did enough to win the second and third round, although I do think the fight was a little closer than what most people are thinking. First round, I thought Gane won. The second round was actually pretty close, although I did give it to Volkov, and then Volkov won the third round for sure. Not the greatest fight. Surreal looked not so good. He did break his toe or toes. He might have broke more than one, which would explain his lack of movement. And in this fight, he was kind of brawling a little bit with Volkov, and Volkov did look improved. He fought more like an MMA fighter and less like just a pure kickboxer, and we saw him, mix everything up a bit. He got fucked over. He should have won. I did pick Gane, but I don't really consider that a right pick because I thought he lost. Moving on up. No edits. Moving on up. Shavkat Rakhmonov versus Ian Gary. I picked Ian Gary by decision. And this fight went mostly how I expected it to go. I thought it would be close, and it was. I did have Shavkat winning, and he did win. I thought Shavkat won 3-2. I thought Ian Gary won the third round and then the fifth round, but Shavkat did enough in the first, second, and fourth to steal those rounds, and really used a lot of his clinch and control, and struggled to get him to get those takedowns early. But as the fight progressed, he was able to finally get Ian Gary down and control him enough to win those rounds. Although Ian Gary looked pretty good, he did look pretty good. Close fight. I think both guys' stocks go up after that one. So moving on up to the main event, I picked Pantoja. Pantoja won dominantly. Kind of dominated him the first round. Kai Escora landed one, oh shit kind of knee for a second that made it, made us go oh shit. But for the most part, Pantoja dominated him in the grappling and then took him down and then ended up choking him out. I picked Pantoja by fourth round rear naked choke. He did it in the second round. He did it a little bit cleaner than I thought he would. So, those are the picks and the recap. So let's get to this card. Let me pull it up on my Tapology just so I have it. Now we're going to get into breaking down Colby Covington versus Joaquin Buckley. So let me pull full screen on this so I can see what I'm doing. View, full screen. All right. So the first fight of the night is between Josephine Knudsen versus Piera Rodriguez. I'm picking Josephine Knudsen in this one. I just feel like she's the more athletic fighter, the better striker, has more technical ability. Although this early in both the women's careers, it's kind of hard to tell. Again, with a lot of women's fights, it's kind of a coin flip. But I do favor Josephine Knudsen in this one. I think she is going to be the cleaner, more technical striker, and I think she'll probably get the win by decision here. So I'm going Josephine Knudsen. So moving on up, we got Davy Grant versus Ramon Tavares. Close fight. Tough fight to pick. A part of me, sees both, avenues where I could pick both fighters to win. I see the reasoning behind it. Davy Grant is definitely the more MMA fighter in terms of his style. He will throw more kicks. He'll throw spinning elbows. He'll throw just different, more unique strikes. And he has a bit of an awkward style and movement and rhythm. And he also has some power. He really does it for a bantamweight. Or actually, I think this fight's at featherweight. But for a bantamweight, it is at bantamweight. So Davy Grant does have power for a 135er. And he can knock people out. He can hurt people. And he's also got a pretty good ground game. He's pretty good submission from his back. Triangles he'll throw up, arm bars. And just overall, a pretty good grappler. Not the best, offensive wrestling. Not the best, overall clamp down top control, but he is a good grappler, and he is, sneaky in those transitions with his submissions and those scrambles. Ramon Tavares, on the other hand, won his last fight against Sari Sidi, I believe his name is. Ramon Tavares, he's a pretty good boxer. He's got good movement. He moves and rolls, and he's got good combinations with his hands. Not the best kicking, and from what I saw, he's not like a world beater of a grappler. He seems like he can defend himself on the ground. Davy Grant's absolutely not a bad underdog, but I am worried a bit by the age and the inactivity of Davy Grant, and I could see Ramon Tavares kind of just piecing him up and being the more active fighter with his hands and the volume and being harder to hit. But that being said, Davy Grant does push a pretty good pace, and he knows how to make the fight dirty, and that's what Ramon Tavares kind of struggled with against Sidi, even though he won that fight. City had a lot of moments as the fight progressed with the volume and just pressure and being tough, and I could see Davy Grant kind of doing the same thing. So I am going to pick Davy Grant here by decision. Tough one to pick, but I do think Davy Grant can make this fight grimy and dirty enough in the clinch up close with his grappling, and just the overall being that more experienced and better MMA fighter versus Ramon Tavares just having very good, slick traditional boxing. Although it is hard to tell because, again, Davy Grant, older, inactive. So we're going to see how he looks in this one. But I'm going to go Davy Grant. I'm going to trust his experience and his overall skill level in this one. So moving on up, we have Miranda Maverick versus Jamie Lynn Horth. I'm going Miranda Maverick. Just more experience in the UFC. She's fought better competition overall, and I just feel like she's a little more well-rounded everywhere the fight goes. So yeah, I'm going to go Miranda Maverick by decision here. Nothing really crazy in this fight as far as a breakdown goes. I just feel like Miranda Maverick is better kind of everywhere the fight goes, besides maybe just purely jiu-jitsu and submissions. But even then, I don't think like Jamie Lynn Horth has a massive advantage over her in that aspect. So moving on up, we got Miles Johns versus Felipe Lima. Yeah, again, close one, but I am going to go Felipe Lima. He looked really good in his last fight, and just overall, he seems like a really solid prospect that's very well-rounded and skilled everywhere. Miles Johns is also, I think, a bit underrated, very athletic, has some power, good wrestler, good overall grappling, defensively, and just a well-rounded fighter, but he's inactive. He doesn't fight a whole lot, and I feel like Felipe Lima is... There's a bit of an aura to him right now in the way he fights and the way he's, finishing people, and he's looked really good. So I'm going to go Felipe Lima in this one. Probably by decision. Miles Johns is, the way he fights is very defensive-minded, and he waits, and then he bursts, and then he goes back to waiting and moving, and then he bursts. And he's just kind of a hard fighter to fight and deal with. So I don't know if Felipe Lima will be able to get the finish in this one, but I do think he's going to be able to win based off of damage and activity and just being the more effective fighter wherever the fight goes. So I'm going to go Felipe Lima here by decision. Moving on up, we have Sean Woodson versus Fernando Padilla. God, man, I really want to pick Sean Woodson because he has all the skills and tool sets, and we see these moments where he looks really good in his fights where you're like, holy shit. But then sometimes, man, it's his inactivity that gets him in trouble, and he lets people fight their way back into the fight and make him a lot closer than it really should be. And he's had that happen against Bruce Leroy. He won the fight, and then he also had it happen against, let me double check his record. Who was it? Who am I blanking on? Charles Jourdain. So both of those fights were pretty close, and I felt like Sean Woodson was the better fighter in both of those matchups. Clearly, he was the better fighter. It's just that sometimes it's like he gets lackadaisical in there, and he lets guys just turn up the volume and kind of make the fight a lot closer than it should be. But skill-wise, he is very good. Fernando Padilla, also a pretty good striker. He knocked out Julian Erosa. He's got some power. He's got that wiry kind of power, and he extends his punches and really turns over on his shots. He did lose... Who did he lose to? Kyle Nelson. That's who he lost to. He did lose to Kyle Nelson, but Kyle Nelson, pretty experienced, and Kyle Nelson's just also one of those guys that's hard to fight because he's constantly clinching you and just putting on that pace and trying to close the gap and not give you any room. So much different style of fight. Woodson likes to fight a little more at range, although he does clinch as well. When people get too close, he does clinch, and he likes to go to that a bit. Tough fight to pick, man. A part of me kind of wants to pick Fernando Padilla because I just feel like he's more vicious and violent from the outside with his striking, and I could see the kicks also giving Sean Woodson a little bit of trouble here. Fuck, dude. I think I'm going Fernando Padilla. Sean Woodson has got to show me a little more in terms of the aggression and just him being locked in during the fight, because his last couple of fights, I didn't like the way he looked in terms of just letting those guys fight their way back into the fight and make it close. So I'm going Fernando Padilla with this one, as I believe he is the underdog. By decision here, I think that the low kicks and just the more effective damaging strikes will be landed by Padilla. I also don't think Sean Woodson is going to really out-grapple him or submit him or, vice versa. I don't see that happening with Padilla submitting Sean Woodson. So, yeah, I'm going Padilla in this one by decision here with the low kicks, the more effective strikes. But Sean Woodson should be able to win this fight because I feel like he is the better overall fighter. I know that's hard to, it probably doesn't make sense me saying that, but it's the fact that Woodson, kind of like Leon Edwards, is Woodson kind of has that same lackadaisicalness to him. He's very skilled. Both guys are very skilled. They don't kick it into that next gear when they need to, and sometimes that gets them in trouble. And I feel like that's going to be the issue in this fight. I'm going to go Padilla by decision here. So moving on up, we got Joel Alvarez versus Drakkar Klose. I'm going Joel Alvarez. I just think, Drakkar Klose is a little older now. He's been through some fights. He has had a couple of losses. He is a good fighter. It's just that when he wins, they're kind of competitive. And then I don't know, man. I feel like Joel Alvarez is just a lot more talented. I feel like he's got better striking from the outside, the inside. He also is pretty nasty on the ground with his submissions and his ground and pound. And he is tall and he's huge for the division, really huge for the division. So I'm going to go Joel Alvarez I'm going to go stoppage in this one. I could see him stopping Drakkar Klose. I could see him catching him with a knee, an elbow, wrapping up a guillotine when he's wobbled or something. So I'm going to go Joel Alvarez by finish here. Not exactly sure whether it'll be submission or TKO, but I think this fight's going to be a wild one while it lasts, and I think that Alvarez is going to catch him in the chaos and end up getting the finish here. So I am going to go Joel Alvarez by finish here. So moving on up, we have Michael Johnson versus Ottman Azaitar. I'm going Michael Johnson. Not too confident in him just because, he's older. He's had a lot of losses, but Ottman hasn't looked good in his last two. Also not the most active guy. And Ottman just kind of swings big power shots, and that's pretty much what he does. Michael Johnson, I feel like, should be able to stick and move, stay on the outside, be the quicker guy, be the more accurate guy. And I could see Michael Johnson TKOing him, but I'm going to go by decision. He is a little older. He'll probably play a little more safe and try to pick Ottman Azaitar apart from the outside and probably win a decision. So I'm going to go Michael Johnson by decision here, just being the more quicker, active guy on the feet. So moving on up, we have Navajo Sterling versus Tuco Tokos. I'm going Navajo Sterling, undefeated prospect. Seems to have some hype around him. I feel like this is one of those fights where the UFC kind of knows what they're doing. So I'm going to go Navajo Sterling by submission in this one. I think he's going to get Tuco Tokos out of there. Not much to really go on. I just think Sterling's the better fighter, better prospect. So I'm going Navajo Sterling by submission. Moving on up, we have Adrian Yanez versus Daniel Marcos. I'm going Daniel Marcos by decision. I feel like Adrian Yanez, very good hands, very good boxing, but I feel like the kicking is his weakness, and being able to stay on the outside and chop his legs down and just use kickboxing is very effective against Yanez. And Marcos is also durable. He's tough. He's not some scrub on the ground. And he's undefeated, and I just think that he's going to be able to chop Yanez down with those low kicks and just pick him apart at range. Yanez will probably have some moments with his hands because he is a good fighter. He's a boxer. But I think Marcos is going to really give him trouble with those kicks. He's just a very good low kicker, and I don't think Yanez handles low kicks well, and just overall really good kickboxers like Daniel Marcos, fundamentally good kickboxers. So I'm going to go Daniel Marcos by decision here. I think this will be a fun fight, though. I think Yanez will have some moments, and he'll definitely land some shots on Marcos and test him. So moving on up, we got Vitor Petrino versus Dustin Jacoby. I'm going Petrino. I've said this probably 100 times, but I firmly believe the Petrino-Anthony Smith fight was a fluke. I think those guys fight fucking 50 times. Petrino wins 49 times. He shot in early, easily picked Anthony Smith up, was going to take him down, but unfortunately just shot right into a guillotine and just let Anthony Smith latch it up and had a big brain fart moment. Petrino, he's going to win this fight. I'm pretty sure he's going to win this fight. I'd be surprised if he lost. Jacoby seems like he's slowing down, like age is kind of catching up to him. He is a good kickboxer, obviously pro kickboxing experience at the highest level, but he could get knocked out. We've seen him get knocked out. We've seen him get hurt. And, he's not the best grappler. He's not the worst either. Like, he could defend himself on the ground for sure. But I feel like Petrino will be the better grappler, and he'll be able to get takedowns against Dustin Jacoby. And even on the feet, I feel like Petrino's got enough skill and enough power to be able to hurt Dustin Jacoby at some point on the feet. That being said, I do think Petrino's path to victory is the takedowns and the top control, and I do think that's where he's going to win this fight. So I'm going to go Petrino by TKO with ground and pound. I think he's going to be able to get the takedowns, wear Dustin Jacoby out, and eventually just trap him on the ground and get a TKO due to a ground and pound. So I'm going to go Vitor Petrino here by stoppage. Tough fight for Jacoby. So, yeah, Petrino by stoppage here. Moving on up, we got Manel Kape versus Bruno Silva. Bruno Silva has a lot of skills. He just doesn't really have the greatest chin. And he also has power himself. But I don't know, man. I see Manel Kape catching him at some point, just KOing him. So I'm going to go Manel Kape. I think Bruno Silva will probably be winning this fight until he isn't. And Manel Kape will eventually crack him and put him away. So I'm going to go Manel Kape by... I'm going to go KO. Yeah, I think he's going to be able to get Bruno Silva out of there. He's going to catch him at some point. I think Bruno Silva will be winning this fight literally until he gets knocked out. I think that's how it's going to look. So I'm going to go Manel Kape by KO. Moving on up, we got, I think, the co-main. This is the co-main. Yep, the co-main between Cub Swanson and Billy Quarantillo. Tough fight to pick. I'm going Cub. Fuck it. I'm going Cub. Billy Quarantillo is an awkward guy. He keeps a very high volume pressure. He likes to clinch, wrestle, grapple. He'll look for some submission attempts. But he does leave a lot of openings to get countered and cracked on the feet. And, Cub Swanson, I'm just going to bank on Cub Swanson being able to catch Billy Q at some point and hurt him in this fight. I don't know if he'll finish him, but I think he might be able to hurt him enough to win a decision over the course of 3 rounds. So I am going to go Cub Swanson by decision here. It's going to be a hell of a fight, hell of a war. Both guys are, I think, a bit older, especially Cub. I don't know. How old is Billy Quarantillo? I don't think he's that old, is he? 36. So he's not, old. For a featherweight, he is old, and Cub is 41. So, yeah, Cub is older for sure. But Cub has actually looked pretty good, man. You could argue that Cub won his last fight against Andre Feely, and before that he beat Hakeem Dawodu. Close fight, too, but overall, I feel like Cub is performing still pretty well in his age, and I just feel like Cub's the overall better fighter, especially on his best day. Similar to Chiesa and Max Griffin, I just feel like Cub is the better fighter on his best day versus Billy Quarantillo. And I'm going to go Cub Swanson by decision here. I think it's going to be a back and forth fight, probably a war, probably another close one, but I am going to go Cub by decision. Moving on up to the main event, we got Colby Covington versus Joaquin Buckley. Why is the graphic not working? Oh, well, we know these guys. Anyways, I'm going Buckley. I think Colby, he's older now, 36, I believe. Inactivity, layoffs, I just don't see him being able to get the wrestling going against a stronger Buckley. Colby is smaller for welterweight. In my opinion, he should have dropped down to 155 like 4 or 5 years ago. But, yeah, I'm going Buckley here by TKO. I think he's going to get Colby out of there. I think he's going to stuff those takedowns early. And I just don't think Colby's really the same guy ever since the first Usman fight. His confidence and his ability to just go right into the fire is kind of died out after the damage he took from that first Usman fight. Even though he had wins after that, he just hasn't quite been the same guy. And I think Buckley's a bad matchup for him. So I'm going to go Joaquin Buckley by TKO probably in the 4th round. So, yeah, those are the picks, you guys. And I will see you guys next time.